Hi everyone, welcome back to B2B Unplugged. I'm Scott Poynton and with is Dan Bassett, we're the co-founders of Brandtail. And in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at how to approach marketing as a founder. So there's a lot to unpack here, but I think it's a really important subject because I think the elephant in the room is that as a founder, you might not necessarily be a marketing expert and you might not have any idea where to start, but you've got a fantastic business idea, you might have funding, and you're sort of wondering how on earth is marketing going to support our growth and how can I stick a rocket, up the backside of my business with the help of some outstanding marketing. So we're going to be diving through sort of the fundamentals, the people side of it, some branding, and then some sort of general just sort of advice and tips on sort of the more tactical side of strategies to sort of guide your growth. But as I said, you might not be a marketing expert. One of the first things that a marketer should do when approaching marketing is to try and learn about it. If you have no prior knowledge, find a great podcast, find a resource, get a book. There's search for the top 10 marketing books a founder can read. There's a huge amount of stuff out there that you can sort of pick up and get a better understanding. So when you're starting to get involved in more of these discussions, you've got a bit more of a solid foundation to be able to. You're not feeling like that you're totally just blissfully unaware of everything and you don't really know where to start. So that's a big first tip.
Yeah, I think from a founder's perspective, I think what they want often, so conversations I have with founders and generally this comes from a technical business perspective. So if you're starting a sort of tech business, I guess it sort of is also true with other businesses and other industries. Generally, what they want is answers to problems. Most founders have got the problem of, I've got a, I think there's a problem in the market that I'm addressing. I'm going to address it like this. But how do I tell people about that? And how do I do that in a way that drives growth for me? How do I get those early opportunities that's going to allow me to keep reinvesting in my business? And it might be because, you might have gone to the extent of going to get pre-seed funding so you can build your tool that might include a bit of marketing, or you might be completely self-funding the project yourself. And in either case, you need early growth to be able to demonstrate, yes, I figured there's a problem and I've proved that problem exists. So I need to continue to invest in marketing. And I think often, resources are fantastic and, podcasts and stuff are fantastic, but quite often what's missing is actually, how do I execute this? I think that's the thing that quite a lot of founders struggle with is they probably know the technical side or the theoretical side of marketing and what I'm supposed to be doing, but they don't know how to do that in a way that drives growth. Quite often that's the challenge that I see.
Yeah, actually applying it. It's the same for everything, right? Even when you come out of school or university, it's applying that knowledge.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I totally get it especially when you're funding your own money. It can be quite scary. You don't want to everything. You're really precious over every pound spent and invested. So yeah, I think that guidance and holding is really, really crucial. I think next year on sort of fundamentals is just knowing who your customers are. Time and time again, we see people or businesses without solid view of their customers that have buyer personas, and it's quite light. And I think the more you can understand who your customers are, what their challenges are, pain points, and obviously the reason for, how your product actually helps. And like you say, there's a challenge in the market, this fixes it. That's going to set you up for some, for success early on and later in the growth of the business as well.
100%. Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's founded an agency and previously been a client-side marketer, if I meet somebody who's in that situation, who's very early stages, and they say to me, "I know exactly who my customers are. This is who they are. This is the problems they've got. And this is how I'm going to address them," and I know what type of organisation I want to be. I am the anti-hero of this type of business as exists currently in the marketplace. So, we are challenging the incumbents because they are bad at service or their product is immature or whatever. Then that's fantastic. As a marketer, I look at that and I think, fantastic, you've got the fundamentals in place that I can then go and run with and help you build a brand strategy and take that to market for you. But yeah, I think you're bang on. You need to start with who are the customers that I'm addressing and what are their pain points. And who doesn't? People get bogged down, I think, with the demographics of the who question, which is, my customers are 45-year-old professional women and they all live in the southeast or something like that's not really important. The thing that's important is what are the things that they're struggling with
Yeah.
and why are they struggling with those things, and then how am I going to address those. I think if you nail that, you're sort of halfway there to putting together a good value proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once obviously the value proposition is fantastic, and that side of knowing who your customers are absolutely crucial. The second side of that, or the other half, is that if you know your customers really well, you'll know where they're likely going to be. You'll know where they go to for information. You know where to start. Testing, marketing your business. Because if you
Yeah,
don't know where they are, you're just shooting blind, aren't you? Um,
100%.
so that's a really big part. And this, a lot of a lot of founders when they're going through these processes will have lots of interviews with customers, and I think that's really important to do that. But don't forget to ask the questions like where do you go to? You've had this challenge. How have you tried to solve it? Where have you been looking?
Yeah,
I think that's a really important part of it. And if you don't have customers to speak to, just lean on LinkedIn, networking channels, go to events, try and speak to as many people as possible because it is really
100%.
valuable.
100%. Yeah, you need to work out where people are hanging out. I think is it's one of the fundamentals. Is what events is everyone going to? What networking things are people doing? Is there a regular podcast in your sector that people are listening to, or whatever it is? Where are they going to try and address some of the challenges that they've got? And if there isn't any of those things, then that's an opportunity, isn't it? Like if there aren't good opportunities for people to network in your sector, then
Yeah,
potentially that's your first channel. Is put together something that people can use,
yeah,
and just play the role of host.
yeah, absolutely. We'll go on to talk about this later, but there's only so much stuff you can do as as marketing as an early stage business. You can't do absolutely everything. So
Mm.
being able to put a really strong focus in one area where people are going to be is going to really help you. But we can sort of touch more on that
Yeah,
um, later. Clear goals for marketing, I think, is a really important fundamental. How how is marketing going to support your business? Because for certain businesses, depending on the setup, it may not be lead gen. It sounds weird to say. Marketing may play another role within that business. I think it's very good to have that clear understanding of how you see it supporting your business and where how you want it to make an impact.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, clear goals are super important, and I think they have to be top down. Those goals, it needs to be. This is what I expect. If
Mm.
you're hiring somebody, um, unless you happen to have somebody who's extremely driven and really really understands your vision of the business, it's going to be difficult for them to set their own sort of objectives. So give a really clear understanding of what you expect from them. Do you expect them to generate leads for you? And if so, what do those leads look like? So what's the barrier for success from a leads perspective? Um, I'm in the camp of set a higher bar as possible when it comes to lead generation. So for me, a lead is never somebody's downloaded the white paper or clicked on a blog.
Just content.
A lead is always somebody has engaged with us in a way that demonstrates that they're interested in buying something that we're selling. And at that point, you then don't waste the time of your salespeople. You drive up the quality and you improve the conversion, hopefully. So I think do those things, set clear goals. And I'm also a fan of giving marketing a revenue based goal as well as a sort of lead generation based goal, because I think that keeps your sales and marketing team, should you be in a position to have both, keeps them really well aligned. So they're pulling in the same direction and fighting the same fight. And I think that really helps with making sure that sales and marketing aren't battling against each other,
Mm.
or that marketing aren't just becoming a slave of sales because sales are the ones that have got the revenue target.
Yeah. That alignment is really important because the one thing I absolutely hate within businesses is marketing versus sales. If you have
Yeah,
there's a pipeline and it's like, no, that's our pipeline. That 50% is our pipeline. It's not. It's not. It's
no, it's
it's your
everyone's.
it's your pipeline. I think there's a lot of egos within sales marketing.
Yeah, yeah, and I get it because salespeople are ultimately people that are responsible for bringing the deals to close.
Mm.
So they take a certain amount of ownership of it, and quite often in CRM systems, a sales deal is assigned to a salesperson. So it doesn't look very much like, okay, well, that's my deal because I'm the salesperson assigned and I'm responsible for closing it. But actually, you're right. Like the culture within the sort of commercial team, if you
Yeah.
like, needs to be one of these are our deals, and we
Yeah.
all need to
I think.
talk about how we bring them in.
Yeah. I
One of the
think.
things that I did, sorry,
No.
one
No.
of the
Go
things I
on.
did at a previous company was we made sure we had weekly meetings to review deals, and it was completely transparent. So what's happening
Mm.
with this deal, what's happening with that deal, what can marketing learn, what can sales learn, what needs to come back and go forth and stuff, and that really helped.
Yeah. I think the where software marketing, put up their attribution to a pipeline. I think we're not doing it to sort of say, "Ha ha, sales, we're better than you." We're just sort of because we're spending a lot of money and we're trying lots of different things. We want to see where those efforts have actually turned into, and that's the main reason when we flag out that 50% of the pipeline has come from X. It's not to put anyone down. It's just to say, right, this is working. How can we improve this? Because at the end of the day, a lot of marketers don't get commission, but the salespeople will. So sales should be like, yeah, go on, marketing, you fill that pipeline with everything for me. I'll go close it and get the commission. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
interesting.
guess that's another thing, isn't it? Like, should marketing people get a commission? Like, um, it's not uncommon for marketing people to get sort of bonuses based on hitting
Mm.
their targets, but should they get a commission for deals that close? Would that drive more high quality deal acquisition if they if they were putting deals into the CRM that were more likely to close because they knew that they were going to get commission from it?
Possibly,
I
I
don't know.
guess it depends on the product. If it's something you could just sign up for on a website and pay, yeah, jump without the need of a salesperson,
Yeah,
marketers should definitely get some commission.
yeah,
Might be slightly biased. And just a quick note just on goals and sort of things as well. I think um, as a marketer, as a founder approaching marketing, I think something to be aware of is short-term goals versus long-term,
yeah,
long-term strategies and short-term strategies in marketing. And what you're looking at, because some stuff will deliver, you know, growth straight away, but there's also stuff you need to be working on in the background that's going to enable that sort of that's more long-term. I think that's a tricky balance to get at this stage where might have limited resources and
yeah.
limited time. Where do you invest? Uh, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and it's one that a lot of, especially founders, I think, really struggle with because, and rightly so, they're impatient to growth.
Mm.
And quite often it's their money. They're saying, "Well, I've invested X amount of money, and I want to see a return on it," which is fair enough. I think as a sort of caveat to that, you can't build in the short term without thinking about the long term. And I think the biggest misconception about marketing is we've just got loads of deals at the back of our sofa that we're going to go and pull out for you. It doesn't work like that. Like you have to build a reputation, which is ultimately your brand strategy, and
Mm.
you have to do that over time. And eventually that has a really positive impact for you because if you can see over time you're getting more direct opportunities coming directly from your website. More people are landing on your website using sort of direct keywords like your brand name or whatever else. That's really really positive.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time to do and do right. It's like SEO. Like you're not just going to turn it on and it's going to work overnight. You have to take a 1, 2, 3, 4 year look at it and try and work out what the best approach is. And I know, there are lots of different opinions in the marketing community about the right balance of long and short term.
Mm.
I think if you read the book that Burnett and Field did, which is called The Long and Short of It, they're sort of they analysed thousands of different companies across different sectors, across B2B and B2C, and they sort of concluded that broadly speaking, a 60-40 split, so 60% on your long term, 40% on your short term, was about right. There's lots of different opinions about that, and I think depending
Mm.
on your business and your market, you have to sort of take a good view. My opinion would be that you should always do both.
Yeah.
You should always be looking to do both in some way, but the right split has to be decided by you as a sort of commercial team. I.e., is the short term stuff that we're doing working? Are we getting enough money into the pipeline that we can afford to invest in the long term and afford to, try keep the business going. If
Yeah.
not, then potentially you need to rebalance that equation a little bit. But yeah, it's super important to think about the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice book reference as well. Good book.
Thank you. It's a really, really, it's a really geeky marketing book. I don't know many marketers that have even read it, but you can get it on Amazon. It's about £50, and it's a sort of really fit. It's a research paper that they're both, I think, marketing professors, so it's quite geeky. But yeah, by all means, give it a read. I found it interesting. I might be the only one.
No, no, definitely not. Okay, so I mean, fundamentals. There's a few more we probably fit in there, but I think probably move on to talk about the people side of it a bit more.
Yeah.
Um, and you wanted to talk about the right first hire. Is it a senior
Mm.
marketer or is it a junior marketer? What's the situ?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I think you can approach this from a couple of different angles. You can look at this from I've got X amount of money to go and find somebody to help us in marketing, and that might equate to a junior person. Or you could look at it as, where am I going and how much, what do I expect from marketing, and therefore what type of person do I need? I think in the perfect scenario, it would be the latter. It's a really difficult one to get right, because I think it's about expectations. And I think so from an expectations perspective, if you have a really clear strategy, vision, you know exactly what you want from marketing, you know what's working, and you want somebody to execute, a more junior person is probably more likely to be beneficial for you, because they're likely to be a good doer. You can just tell them, these are your tasks, get on with those. We'll put you on a few courses and we'll try and get you to a more senior level in a year or 2 years or whatever. If you're sort of struggling with the equation of marketing and sales and how it all ties together and what our long-term vision is and stuff like that, a more senior strategic person might help. Or a blend of the both, depending on the situation you're in. But I think it's a really difficult one to get right.
They're very hard to find those people in the middle, though.
Yeah, it is. It's extremely difficult to find a good T-shaped marketer that is broad skill set, goes deep on maybe strategy, and maybe sort of they're a good copywriter or something like that. It's such a difficult hire to find, which I think often is why people, certainly in the role that I was last in when I joined as a solo marketer, I joined and then we hired an agency to support me, and I think that was that helped in those early days, because it gave me the sort of I could go focus on the strategy side of things and how we're going to implement it and how we're going to address our audience, and then they could help me execute and be creative and build the things that I wanted to build. So I think quite often that can help people tackle that problem, is hire a good person that's passionate about what you're doing and then find a really good agency to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in that situation before as well, and it makes the world of difference to be able to have that support, because not everyone could just jump in and hire a full marketing team straight away. I think it's an interesting one, junior versus senior, because there's a risk if you go too senior, you might end up with someone, and if you're not, if you can't hire an agency or hire anyone else, and you've just got this senior person, if they're too strategic and not much of a, as Kieran Flanagan put it there on LinkedIn, an individual contributor, then you're going to have all the plans, all the decks and everything, but then not have the ability to, or the right skill set to execute it. That's something to watch out for, because it might feel like more of a safe bet to get the super experienced person. How can it go wrong? But like you say, if you can get a clear plan, you can work with the agency to do that, or build your own. Then you can hire a junior person and have them execute it and watch them grow. I mean, we say junior. It's probably someone 2-3 years, maybe. Probably what you're looking at. Someone who's got some good experience, but is not going to be demanding a massive salary.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's someone in the middle, because what you don't want is somebody that's like, they've just stepped away from a CMO role at a big company where they manage a team of 50 people or something. You don't want that type of person, I don't think, in most cases, because they're probably too senior. They're too far removed from the sort of execution side of things. And I might be talking ill of some people. There might be some great executors that have done the CMO role at a high level, but I think generally speaking, you want somebody who's a senior doer, I guess. Somebody who's got good experience, understands the sort of more sort of advanced principles of like commercial strategy and stuff, but can execute as well to a degree. And then you complement that with some, a good agency or, at some stage a more junior person to sort of work with them or something. I think that would be a good initial blend. But yeah, it's a difficult equation because you're probably that type of senior doer, you're probably spending anywhere between sort of 40 and 60 grand a year on sort of salary plus benefits and stuff. So it's a not inexpensive way of tackling your marketing problems. So it needs to be right.
Mm.
But yeah, I've always been an advocate of hiring for personality rather than skills necessarily.
Yeah.
Somebody's got the right personality, they're passionate about what you're doing, and they love marketing or whatever, then
Mm.
they get it right eventually. But
Yeah, and startups are an interesting place to work. It's very, you have to be very scrappy, very hands-on. You can have the clearest plan in the world, but
yeah,
sometimes random stuff's going to get thrown at you that you have to deal with. And I think, yeah, that personality is a really good thing, because you never know what you're going to do in a startup. One day, as a marketing manager at a startup, I was driving a van around central London, moving all of our stuff from one
yeah,
storeroom to another one. You never
yeah.
know
It's
what you're going to be
random.
doing. You never know what you're going to be doing.
No, it's great. I always used to say to people in interviews that like if you join us at this stage, you're going to get 3 years experience in 1 year because you're going to be asked to do more than you would do if you went to go and work for a corporate or a more established business, or whatever. So,
Yeah,
it will test you, and if you're the type of person that's flexible and able to go with the flow of things and change strategy completely mid race, then you'll probably get on well. But if you're not that type of person, then the startup environment is really difficult. But from a founder's perspective, I think you need to find somebody who's got good energy, good
mm,
passion, understands your problem, and you're convinced it's going to work hard for you to get it done. But yeah, it's a difficult hire.
yeah. And the same thing goes for if you're looking to hire an agency as well. You want to make sure you've got the right agency partner to support your goals
100%.
and your journey, because you could. There's equally a lot of risks there as well in getting the wrong people in. Um,
100%, yeah. I think often people think an agency is sort of a panacea to a problem. They're like, if I hire this agency, they're going to solve all these problems for me. It doesn't necessarily work like that. They still need some of the fundamentals in place. And quite often you get sort of one of two types of agencies. I think you either get the agency that's got loads of big bold ideas, and then they go and run big campaigns for you, and that's great for awareness. But they I think quite often struggle in the actually how does that turn into growth. Um, or you get an agency that's a bit more strategic. They take a bit longer to get things right. But they're looking at your sort of broader problem set,
yeah,
and it's
like,
you know,
yeah, they're getting
there's ways, there's benefits of having both, I think. But it's a difficult balance.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I think obviously with anyone, I think we've kind of touched on this already with goals. I think it's just whatever hire you do, whether it's a junior or a more senior person, you have to keep them really target driven and have
Mm.
how are they supporting the overall objects of the business, just like we said earlier. Keeping people aligned is absolutely crucial. So don't just hire someone and then don't just don't set any targets or anything. Just kind of let them crack on. You need to keep people driven um,
Yeah.
and work on the right things.
100%. Yeah, my old boss used to say to me when hiring people, he said he had this thing in his head that was always like, is this person a legend? And what he meant by that is this somebody that I can completely trust to do the job? And I think that's one of the most important barriers to get around. Like, is this like? And Steve Jobs used to call it like A players. Like, A players will eventually hire B players, but you need to stop them doing that. They need to hire people that are better than them. So
Yeah,
is this person an A player or not? And I think unless you're 100% committed to that person, is this person's fantastic, I'm so excited to work with them, they're going to change everything for us, then don't hire them.
yeah, absolutely. And more often than not, just if you hire the right people or the right agency, they'll come in, and if you don't set them and keep them target driven, they'll naturally be target driven and do that anyway.
Yeah,
So that's something to think about.
yeah,
Moving
100%.
on, so fundamentals, got that down. People, obviously, a big part of fundamentals, but kept in its own category, is branding. Something obviously we're really passionate about. I think there's a strong importance of creating a really strong brand right from the get go.
Hmm.
It's absolutely crucial, and why do you exist? What's your mission? How do you, seek to make a difference in the industry? These are all things you need to be able to answer and create a brand.
Yeah, it's it's often the stuff that's described as sort of waffly in marketing, I think, but it's super important for a very important reason. I think if you get your brand strategy right, whilst it might seem a little bit hyperbolous, might be the right word, it might seem a little bit waffly. Um, it's really important to help marketing with positioning. So if
Mm.
you're able to say, our values are as an organization are, we're credible, we're passionate about our sector, driven, we want to be authentic or whatever it might be, and then our mission is to support the sector in doing X, Y, whatever it is. That helps the marketing team then develop the rest of their messaging for product, for blogs and papers and everything else. So it helps them make sure that everything is written in the right way and positioned in the right way. So it's a super important process to go through. And actually, sometimes it can really have a really important impact on the business culture as well. I found when I've done sort of that process internally with founders and taken them through a sort of mission, vision, and values process, what comes out of it is should be a really clear, this is who we are and this is who we aren't. And at that point, it's up to the founders of that business or the sort of senior leaders of that business to then drive that into the culture and make sure that everything we're doing is are we doing this to push this needle a bit further forward than it was previously. So I think it's a super important part of the process to get right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
don't devalue it. Spend some time doing it properly.
No, absolutely. And it's not something you could just set and then never touch and evolve again. Obviously, these things will change, but just trying to start with get that mentality and being like that's going to really help you. And as a customer, people always talk about customer centric. When building a brand, it's really important. It goes back to knowing who your customers are. Building a brand that people can connect with, I think is really important. But yeah, like you say, having this clear message that you can go out to with. And that's a really important part in this really early stages is consistency. You're experimenting with lots of different channels. You can be probably growing in lots of different areas. You need to be consistent across all of those, or else people aren't going to start to connect with you and learn who you really are. They might just get confused with different messaging, and that's some of the risks when if you hire an agency that kind of just go off and do their own thing and start going off piste, you can then have conflicting messages going around. So I think it's really important to have that standardized process in place to ensure you're keeping to your brand values and who you are.
100%. Yeah, and it's about it's ultimately reputation management. In a year's time, you want a customer to say those guys are brilliant because they completely get our problem and that they're working hard for us. That's the ultimate compliment, I think, for any business, that a customer says they understand us and they're building for us. And I think that comes from your values, that then goes down to how your people are managed and how your products are developed and everything else. And I think it's one of the most important parts of a business strategy for me.
Yeah, and
I
spend the
say that
time.
from a marketer's perspective, obviously, because I'm a communicator, but I think it's really important.
No, it is absolutely, and I think what I think is really important. I think is to invest in a document or brand, not necessarily brand guidelines that just goes through what your font is and your colours. One that really articulately says who you are, and having that document is really important for any new starters to the business to be able to come in and get a really good grip. And it obviously just helps putting it all into one document anyway. But I think having that as a pretty early on is really good. It's one of the first things I give to any new employee in a business. Here's our brand deck. Here's everything you'll need to know about us and what your role is in it to play. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
But obviously we can talk about brand for
yeah, I think it's a really nice thing to be able to do.
and get it really nicely designed. Spend a bit of time, and yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, if I try and dig out a good example and whack it in the comments, I think that'd be quite good. And then probably just one last thing, and I know I've said this on another podcast, but I'm going to keep running it home. Don't worry too much about a logo and how it looks. And you sort of, just as long as you've got focus more on messaging and positioning, because you might not have, V1 of most logos from startups I've seen are always really bad, and no one will remember those days,
Yeah,
but they will remember all the important fluffy stuff, how they make you feel, their experience, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, don't spend ages tinkering with the logo, changing it every other week. Just focus on the most important stuff, which is growth.
Yeah.
Um, and how your
Do you know what?
logo.
I think it'd be really interesting if like somebody did a book and it was sort of like the evolution of brands, like famous brand logos or something like that over time. Because I think that would tell a story for people that they actually see like, oh yes, a lot of these companies started out with some really really awful things. You
Yeah,
only have to look back at like Apple's original logo was like a really weird picture of like Newton under a tree and like an apple for it. It was really bizarre and it made no sense. And now they've got like the most perfect simplistic logo that is recognised
yeah,
worldwide.
and
But
yeah,
like it's taken them
no one
30
remembers.
years to get to that stage.
Yeah. Well, if you're ever curious about a brand, way back when machine on the old Google, that'll have a look at some of your competitors or brands you might be joining. Have a look at the sites look like. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
cool. Yeah, we're going to go on to talk more about some of the more actionable side of it, campaigns, things you can do to grow your business. And one thing, it's a really annoying phrase, but it's quite pertinent to this, which is doing more with less. There's a whole sort of thing around lean marketing. Um, but I think startups need to go through a process of experimentation. If you find out what channels are going to work for you, and I think some of the startups that I've worked in have been really harsh with testing something, learning about it, but then deciding whether or not to carry on. This is not right for us. Park it. We'll reevaluate this later. And I think that's quite
Yeah,
important because the more you can learn in a short period of time, then this test and learn approach is going to help you. So you don't be like, oh, we're doing this and we're just going to stick with it for ages and hope it works. Try everything. Try really creative ideas. Just have this, and create really strong feedback
yeah,
loops from around the business of how this has worked. And then, whether you how you if you score things and you document your learnings, I think it's a really important process to go through. But yeah, never be afraid to test anything because you can't just say, oh, well, I don't think that'll work. That doesn't fly with me. Obviously, you have people who
100%. Yeah,
spend loads of money, but I think as long as there's a proper plan behind it and rationale as to why you think it will work, then you got to go for it.
yeah. I saw something really interesting on this the other day on LinkedIn, which was there was somebody basically who was explaining a process that they use for learning. I thought it was really interesting. Something I want to try in the future is that they create like an incident log on like just like Excel or Google Sheets or
Mm,
something like that, and it just documents the changes that they've made to a process. So they might be like running a PPC campaign, and then they've changed their bidding strategy. So they've a new line, changed this on this date to this whatever, and then they're documenting the results that that's driving them. Now, sort of in your early stages, you might not be running paid media or not be doing it to that extent, but there's no reason why you can't, you might have a landing page process or, an email journey or something like that you've built, and you might want to tweak certain things and understand what impact that's having. So
mm.
like, yeah, do a thing for a week or two, change it, document it, see what the results are. I think it's a really nice idea because it keeps a really sort of consistent picture of what's working. And then you're able then to sort of take that back, to the founder of the business and say, this is what we did, this is what we changed, this is the impact it has, whatever. I think it's quite an interesting idea.
I feel quite smug now because I do that. I
Do
use
you?
emoji. I use
Okay, there you go then.
emoji for it. Yeah, so any change will be tagged as to what it related to or whatever. But yeah, it was actually really helpful, especially when performance went downhill. You kind of see
Yeah,
right in HubSpot. Oh, leads started to drop here. What on earth did we change? And you can go into this change log. And go, okay, we've changed this, and now it's broken something, so we can revert back, or we can try and fix it.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
really
love
good thing
that.
to do. And especially, just any new marketers joining, there's a whole history there of changes. And I always made a point to put in why I made the change, what was the rationale behind it, and what I expected the outcome to be.
Yeah.
And that was really good. So yeah, I might do a post about it because if people are out there taking credit for stuff that I've done,
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you create an idea and then you learn later it already exists. The amount of sort of epiphany shower moments I've had where I've been like, oh, it'd be a great idea if somebody made a business like this, and then you look into it and you're like, oh, it already exists. Yeah.
And just on feedback loops, sorry for coughing. I think the key thing is to incorporate it really quickly. If you've got a campaign running or something you're doing and you've got some feedback, make the change straight away. Don't necessarily wait. Oh, the campaign's running for another 2 months. Planning, we'll make that change then. I would just do things as quickly as possible. If you've got feedback and you agree with it, and again, there's rationale behind a change, incorporate it, go from there, because you don't have a lot of time in marketing. The quarters and the years pass by all too quickly. Those who move fast prosper. So
yeah, especially if you're in a niche market, quite often in B2B, you've got a very limited audience. So, if you're burning through your audience trying to do something and you haven't then changed it, it's really difficult then for you to remeasure and say, did this work or not? So, I think even more reason if you're in a niche market to make changes quickly.
Absolutely.
And try and fall forward as much as possible.
Yeah. Next annoying phrase, things to talk about, and it's very related to this, to the previous point: growth hacking.
Yeah, I saw somebody the other day who was like, I'm really annoyed by these weird sayings in marketing, like growth hacking. Isn't growth hacking just marketing?
Yeah,
It sort of is. I think unless you're in I know there are some companies, and they generally are tech companies. And I read a book. I can't remember the name of the book now, but I remember and put it in the comments. It's called Growth Hacking, and they very much are just focused on sort of product. They're basically product marketers. So what they do is they look at, so that if you imagine that you're a business that has a freemium model, and you take to market a solution, you try and get loads of people adopted onto the free version. They then make tweaks in the product to then try and encourage people to buy the product. So there might be like, okay, get rid of that feature, and then when somebody clicks on that button, offer them a discount or something like that. And is that going to drive more people to take a paid version or not? So stuff like that I kind of get. So I think for the majority of us, growth hacking is just marketing.
It's just marketing. But I get it. You're looking at for startups, it's about low cost activities that help you quickly grow and scale. I think that's what when people say growth hacking, that's what people are making reference to. But I think really for startups and for founders, I think from the businesses I've worked in and sort of questioning, how did you grow so quickly at this stage, or how did you get here? And it's often one or two really creative customer acquisition tactics. It may be a simple referral scheme from your first couple of clients, and it just going from there. It may be it might be a media story, a bit of PR right at the start of the business around like a really creative story. It's never, oh yeah, we just created a website and started to rank immediately and grew like that. It's never that. There's always some really creative campaign. It might be going into London with a cardboard cutout of something or whatever that's got your sort of business on the map and started those conversations. They're building that buzz. And although it seems quite risky and a lot of this stuff is hard to track and all this, I think it's definitely worth doing. You've got to think outside the box, especially if you're entering a saturated market. I think you're going to really push to just try this stuff. I mean, there's a really great brand on LinkedIn for quite a while. Their buzz was quite a while ago. It was Thursday. That dating app. I know it's sort of not B2B, but they did this really cool. They just tried stuff and
guerrilla marketing tactics. They did a lot of, didn't they?
Yeah, through that, and that's kind of where when we look at growth hacking, I probably, instead of just jumping straight to paid media and doing other stuff, try and think of some creative campaigns. It may just be setting up partnerships. Some of the best things I've done in startups is looking at companies who have the same sort of ICP but offering something different and saying, hey, look, I can benefit your customers like this, you can benefit, vice versa. Let's get some sort of referral scheme going.
Yeah, 100%. Or they'll do a webinar series together or whatever it is. But there's so many opportunities like that out there, and quite often like people don't approach you because they think, oh no, they wouldn't work with us, but just make the call and see what happens.
And this is
Yeah.
the sort of stuff that's not taught in university and not
Yeah.
taught online. When you go, oh, I'm going to do my marketing fundamentals at HubSpot or whatever. As good as those courses are, it doesn't
Mm.
necessarily cover some of this really scrappy ad hoc. Right, there's a really creative idea that we're going to do.
Yeah. I think that comes from experience, those types of things, because
Yeah,
they're good people that have a good understanding of how sort of the commercial world works. Sort of think like that and think, oh, if I got these people to help me, it might work. But you need a bit of experience to sort of get there, I think.
yeah, absolutely. And this is really good for getting for building that brand awareness and getting a chance to get your creative messaging out there is through these creative strategies. Again, Thursday's an example. They became their whole brand doing this sort of stuff, which was really, really cool. Obviously, with all of this stuff, data obviously plays a part. You're experimenting with lots of things. You're doing. We've mentioned rapid experimentation, but there's a feedback loops for trying lots of new things. Looking at the data is obviously really important, and it's not to be overlooked because that is going to guide, obviously, what is actually adding deals to the pipeline and adding revenue to the business. So that very quickly you will
Yeah,
start to see the areas you need to double down on and the areas you need to drop. So you need to you
yeah,
need to make sure you've got that system in place to be able to capture the data and report on it, or else you're just gonna you might be doing the wrong things for far too long.
yeah. 100%. I think it goes back to the fundamentals actually, but I think data is a really important thing to make sure you get right. Make sure you own your data. Make sure you have a good CRM system where your data exists. Make sure you're regularly looking at it. You're scoring it based on the quality. How many email addresses have we got for our ICPs? How much data completeness have we got, and try and drive that up as much as possible. There are you can go and buy lists of data and stuff like that. Some of them are really good. Some of them are really awful. There's no rule necessarily as to what to look out for, but data is a challenge, but it's sort of one of those fundamentals that I think, from a founder's perspective, like in the early days, you need to sort of think about and get right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, in this section as well, it's all well and good doing all this stuff to acquire customers. Don't ignore retention strategies and things you can do to keep
Yeah,
those customers and keep them happy. I think it's the most
so
important
important.
thing. You want to keep those early customers. They're really great for helping you grow your
Yeah,
business, obviously for loads of reasons, referrals, feedback, and
yeah,
obviously revenue. But yeah, there's loads of different things you can do to try and keep people. Everyone knows it costs more to acquire new customers than it does to keep current ones. Um, but
yeah.
people often forget about it and just think, new sales, new business, more
Yeah,
pipeline.
100%. I think if I was an investor today, I think one of the most important metrics I would ask for is what's your NPS score. I think it's so important to, like, if you've got a good customer base which is growing and they are happy, and your NPS score has stayed relatively consistent through your high growth phase, then
Hmm.
that's a good indicator that you really value customers and you put a lot of time into making sure that they're happy.
Yeah,
It's such an important thing, and from a marketing perspective, you're bang on. Like, you know, it's cyclical. The more happy customers you've got, the more likely they are to talk to you, to do case studies, to do videos, to come to events for you, to speak at, dinners for you, or whatever it might be that you're asking them to do. They're more likely to be able to do all this with because they're really happy to work with you.
yeah, absolutely. Um, Moving on to, and I've titled this as entrepreneurial marketing. But just from my experience of startups, I think one thing that I think it's really good to get across to founders who are sort of thinking about how they, what they need to do in approaching marketing is it's quite scrappy at times, and nothing needs to
Mm.
be perfect. I remember one time we did like a one to many sort of campaign where we sent some food out in some boxes with personalised handwritten notes. So there's like 4 or 5 of us in the office from across different teams writing these notes. My handwriting is terrible, and it was all on this just like standard card. There was nothing special about it. It was just a nice little message. They started to get less personalised, I will admit, but it is what it is. And then all of us were loading these boxes into sacks. We took it down to Royal Mail. We needed to send it. We didn't have a corporate account, so we couldn't just hand it all over. And if you've been to like the
Mm.
self-serve things at the post office, we were putting 300 of these through paying for it on our own card and then expensing it later, and it took hours and hours and hours. But it worked. It generated lots of conversations afterwards. We learned a hell of a lot, but it wasn't perfect. It was really scrappy, but we did it. I think you have to have that mentality sometimes where, oh yeah,
Yeah,
we can make it
just
happen.
go and get
You
it
don't
done.
have to work. You don't have to work with a bespoke company that you can pay loads of money for. You can do it yourself sometimes. I think that's just a really important reminder that it is quite scrappy. And for any marketers listening to this who are then going to be joining one startup, it is going to be like that at times. Um,
Yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah. I think that, the word entrepreneurial I think is quite important. Like I think I think it might even be Gary Vaynerchuk was talking a while ago about sort of having like an internal sort of like entrepreneur lead in your business. So they're not necessarily an entrepreneur because they're working for you, but their job is to think like that and to sort of try those different types of campaigns out and try and get things moving. But yeah, you bang on like startups. You have to be prepared to roll your sleeves up, get stuff done, and work it out. Like the amount of times I've gone to a situation and done something I've never done before, but we've just
Mm.
worked out. Been on filming days and been directing a filming crew and stuff like that. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I think this is the right thing to do. Let's try and get it working. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's always all right on the night.
Yeah, yeah, always all right on the night. And yeah, learning is the most important thing. If you learn something, then it's never a failure or a total failure. And then it's just entrepreneurial marketing as well. And particularly for founders, this is a big reminder that your personal brand is absolutely massive.
Yeah,
A lot of startups, the founders are incredibly, helpful for their growth in terms of their presence on platforms like LinkedIn. And I think
yeah,
you need to get active, even if it's just posting random updates, building the business in public
yeah,
or becoming that thought leader in the space. I think that's really important, and it's not one to be ignored. And if you've got a marketer you've just hired and they're saying, we need to work on a personal brand, give it a shot, go and do it. And there's loads of tips and tricks that we can share in some future episodes. But I think really,
yeah,
really important one. Even if you think no one knows who I am, people will. People
yeah.
gravitate
They're
towards founders, businesses. So
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I think their skepticism for it is because they think I was going to come across as cheesy or like I'm trying really harder than I think I'm bigger than I am or whatever. Like there's ways of doing it in a really authentic way. That's you know I don't think most marketers would want you to do something you're uncomfortable with. It just needs to be natural and be you and
mm,
share your ideas, share things you've learned, build in public, whatever it is. And yeah, it's one of the most impactful things I've done is get a founder out there more, and it really benefits. Because quite often they understand the problem and they've got good relationships in the market already, so
hmm
you might as well utilize them.
yeah, and they're super passionate about their
Yeah,
products that will come across natural, which I think is really, really, really great. um, and now, lastly, we're going to talk very briefly around budget, everyone's favourite topic, but obviously money does fuel marketing in many ways. And I think
yeah,
this effective allocation of whatever resources you have, you may have a really small budget, you may have a large budget, but you've got to use it effectively. And I
yeah,
think that's where this testing and learning and getting a load of feedback is really important. You'll learn, you'll learn where you need to start spending more money and where you can scale up. It's always about starting small and building rather than just going all in. I wouldn't want a founder jumping in, 2 months into a role and they go, oh, we're going to go to this exhibition and spend 50K on a stand and doing that because there's a lot of risks. So I think move cautiously, and yeah, the data will show you where you need to invest.
yeah, 100%. But yeah, you're right. I think like have a budget, and I would say it's a few things from a founder's perspective. Be prepared to sort of have that conversation, have a clear budget, make sure that what you're getting back is a really clear attribution of where leads are coming from. So we spent the money on an event or we spent money running a direct mail campaign or whatever it is. What was generated from that, either in engagement or leads or whatever. And from a marketer's perspective, I think regularly report on that. Make sure you need to give the confidence to the founder of the business that you've got it, that you're on it from a budget perspective. So, create a spreadsheet, create a report, whatever it is, but include it in your monthly board report, whatever. But regularly go back to them and say, we spent this money, this is what we've driven from it. this is what I'm going to do next month. Is I want to spend this money doing this and doing this, whatever it is. But just make sure that you're regularly giving that picture back to them in a way that makes sense to your founders. So they might want it very simply. They might want just give me a return on investment. Give me a percentage, whatever. Or if you somebody's a bit more technical, or they want a bit more of a deep dive, they might want a full spreadsheet that goes into all of the detail where you're spending all of your money, everything. But yeah, be prepared to give that information, I think, and be consistent with it.
Yeah, and try and structure budgets in a flexible way that you're not for. So I know certain people set up budgets in a really difficult way where you have this money to spend this month. If you don't spend it, you lose it forever.
Yeah, that's silly.
It's a surefire way to kill creativity, experimentation and growth is to have it like that. So
yeah,
try and have some flexibility. And yeah, but it helps you set better targets. If you've got a good view of how much it costs to get a customer, and what your budgets are, you're going to be in a much better place to predict your growth. With 100%. That. But effective budget allocation is obviously really important. But there's lots of stuff you can do for free. Startup marketing. And you don't have to play with do the exact same thing as all the big players in your market if there are any. But yeah, I think the most important thing is just experimentation and learning. Just for all of this, just like a summary point. But you have the right people around you to be able to give you advice before going and doing it. I think is quite important.
100%.
I think just building a network around you as well. I think I wanted to mention this earlier. If you've got peers, they might not be in your industry, might be so down the local pub. Try and build a network of people around you that you can sort of say, "Here, can I have some feedback on this? What do you think of this?" Get some feedback from as many people as possible about some of the stuff you're doing. And with that, if you have a junior marketer, consider getting a mentor for them instead of if you've not got the time or you want some more experience. There's lots of avenues out there to get some feedback and help your business grow. That's probably one thing I would like to end on. Dan, is there anything you would like to end on before we tie things up?
No, I think from a founder's perspective, I think take marketing seriously. Try and learn from it as much as possible, and try and get the fundamentals in place. I think anybody that you hire, once you've got those sort of really strong fundamentals in place, will have everything that they need to go and run for you. So get focus on that in the early stages, I think. And that's it.
Well, great. Thank you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.